I was having a conversation with some friends recently, my wife and I, and we got to talk about life, the depths of life, the hopes of life, the hard things in life. And towards the end, it was going so well, and I decided to ruin it by asking, so why don't you guys do church? And it just went downhill I'm kidding, it still went well. We are still friends today. But as I asked that question, it brought up some really good conversation. And it brought up some insight to those who may not do church. Maybe they once did, or maybe they never did. And one of the friends said, I just don't want to go and be talked at. I don't find that very helpful. I was like, oh, tell me more. And we kind of walked through that. And it's someone who had grown up in church. And their understanding of church was that there's someone that is telling someone else what to do all the time. And then followed by that, they said, I've actually had more meaningful conversations with people outside of religion than I have within it. And I can actually have hard conversations and talk about the realities of life outside of the church. And while I can keep unpacking some of those things, what really this kind of drove me towards was asking the questions of what's the church known to be, especially for those outside of it. For those that are looking on, for those that have never experienced it before, the reality is why they haven't experienced church, I guarantee they've experienced someone who might identify as a Christian along the way. They've identified someone who is practicing or following the ways of Jesus. They're identifying or have experienced someone who identifies as believing in God. And in and through those experiences, they're making a determination on who God is and how they're going to relate to him and to his church. And I just started to think more about how Christians can oftentimes be more known for the bad things than the good things. Christians can be known as being hypocritical and judgmental and narrow-minded and hateful, and know-it-alls. And we can just kind of keep going down the list. Now, what's weird is that's kind of everybody, right? That's not just unique to people who call themselves Christian or do this thing called church. That's literally everybody. But shouldn't the church be different than everybody? If we're looking to a God who is all loving, kind, merciful, and forgiving, shouldn't we start to look like a people who are all loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, compassionate? Should we not be taking on a different nature than what we could typically be known for just by being human? And so today, I really just want to sit with the question of why are we doing this? If it's not leading to people being attracted to what we would say Jesus, so actually someone beyond us, demonstrated by the ways in which we live, if they're not attracted to say, hey, why are you this way? I experience unforgiveness all the time. Why are you so forgiving? I feel judged all the time. Why are you so open-minded? We could keep going down that list. Should we not be actually people who are known for the ways of Jesus more than the ways of just our own natural behaviors? And so what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And why could we actually look pretty plainly at the scriptures, at Jesus, who came in the fullness to demonstrate who God is and to return us to the way in which God originally created all things to be? And as we look at his life plainly, it doesn't always match up with what the church is known to be. So I wonder, where did we get it wrong? Where did things take a turn? When we read something so plainly like this in John 15, Jesus talking to his 12 disciples, also known as his friends, I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. He continues, I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, if we just pause even just right there, I would disagree that you and I can do nothing. I will just flatly say I think Jesus is wrong in this moment because you did a lot of things this week. You did a lot of things this morning. You've done a lot of things in your life. I mean, so just to say that apart from me, you can do nothing doesn't really add up because we do a lot of things. But I think Jesus knows that. There's plenty that we can do and can be doing and will always do. It seems that Jesus is actually asking us, what are you actually doing and what's the impact of what you're doing? Are you just doing things out of your own self, your own desires, the ways in which you naturally just kind of drift? Or are there ways in which you can do nothing meaningful, purposeful, everlasting, beyond just your own ways, apart from me? Is there actually a way in which the things that you and I do can be far greater than what we could actually do on our own? That there's something that can move us to find more purpose, more meaning, that we can actually live in a way that tends to have an impact outside of ourselves, not just for ourselves. Going back to this idea of people looking at Christians, people looking at the church, people looking at followers of Jesus and wondering, well, why are they still judgmental if they've been a Christian for 25 years? Why do they seem more harsh and hateful after they've professed their faith in Jesus? Why are these things now? If he's saying that you can do nothing apart from me, then I would agree with him, because why would we just want to be more judgmental? I could be judgmental very easily without something else. I am judgmental very easily without something else. And so he pauses to say that you can do nothing more than what you can do by yourself apart from me. So I wonder, if you think about your last week, you think about your last month, what are the things that you've done that have been more meaningful than you could do on your own? What are the things that other people would look at you and say, thank you for? Thank you for being different. Thank you for doing something different. Or did you just kind of do things because that's just what we do? He continues, if you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. Again, he says, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. Do you experience joy in everything that you do? Are you overflowing with joy no matter the circumstances that you find yourself in? It seems that Jesus is moving towards you and I in a way that is actually going to change the way in which we live, where other people will know that we are following Jesus, and it's tied to you and I finding completion in joy. That there's something above and beyond the circumstances that carries us through with hope and faith that other people recognize and that is different from most people. Where are you at with joy as we enter into this morning? What are the things that are robbing you of joy? What's hard and seems impossible to actually find joy in the things that you experience in life? Because Jesus' invitation is that if you remain in my love, if you draw near to me and you actually accept that I have made the first move, that I'm not asking you to do something that I have not done my own, you can actually find completeness in me and a joy that will be above and beyond what you can experience on your own. If you noticed, he said the same thing about, what felt like 100 times. What was the phrase? Remain in me. I highlighted it for you guys and everything, so it was not a trick question, okay? Thank you for being brave and wondering if you're going to get it wrong. Remain in me. In the book of John, he actually says it 63 times. Remain in me. John, the author of John, he actually writes that I write this whole book, the story of Jesus. I captured the ways in which Jesus taught and lived so that you may believe. So that you may believe. And in that, he includes the words of Jesus, remain in me, 63 times. You wonder if there's something that that John is doing to point us that a part of believing actually means there's a posture of remaining. The Greek here is meno, for remain in me, and the word is actually to abide. To abide. The Greek here, to continue to be present, to be held, kept continually. To continue to be, to not perish, to last, endure. To remain as one, not to become another or different. To remain as one, put that one twice. To remain as one, not to become another or different. Would you say that you felt held this past week? Would you feel that you were kept by something? Were there ways in which you felt perishing, like your life was just being depleted and that things were hard? The reality is that you and I are kept in something daily. We can choose to remain in many things, and we're told to remain in many things. We can choose to remain in ourselves. We can choose to remain in our worries and our fears. We can choose to remain in our own pride and our own selfishness. We can choose over and over and over again. You and I are remaining in something right now, and it seems that Jesus recognizes that and says, remain in me. Because you can remain in a lot of things, but they will not bring you the complete and full life that I have for you. To where other people will look upon your life and say, what is so different about them? What do they have that I do not have? So I wonder if you think about your recent life, what have you been remaining in the most? What have you been abiding in? I think the invitation for us this morning is to actually return to abide. That we are a people that are continuously returning to abide. That we are looking to be filled by the love that Jesus has for us so that we can love. So that we can experience grace. So that we can experience joy. So that we can be people who are actually transforming to participate in the transformation that God is doing in our world. What are you remaining in? Is your life defined by abiding, or might it be defined by striving? Because the invitation that Jesus has for us here, it seems that life with him is to abide and not to strive. Striving not meaning working hard. Striving, not getting things done. Striving meaning that I am exhausting myself of my own ways to see things through. Striving being that I am depending on myself and only myself to do the things that I want to do. Striving being that I feel like I have to see this through in my own power, my own will, my own ability. I have another friend that oftentimes in the church and will say that God helps those who help themselves until someone can't help themselves, right? I try to remind him oftentimes that that's nowhere in the scriptures. Actually, it seems that Jesus draws near those most who actually can't do anything for themselves. And it's he that props them up. Have you been propped up, or do you feel like you are just propping yourself up? Have you turned to Jesus and the things that are weighing on you, bearing upon you, the weights that are too heavy, or are you white-knuckling it through? The invitation over and over again is for you and I to return to abide. It doesn't just happen once. We actually remain. We stay constant. There's something larger than us that we can stay connected to, that changes the way in which we live, we interact with other people, we experience God. So I just want to pause here, and I just want to ask you, you're going to talk amongst yourselves for just a quick 2 minutes. Introverts, you can't go fill your coffee this time. Nathan already gave you an out. But just for a couple minutes, I mean, very quickly, the way in which we retain information, if you hear information coming at you, I think there's like a 7% chance you're going to remember like one thing. When you actually talk about it with someone else, it goes up to like 40%. I'm kind of making those numbers up, but it's in and around there. 60% of stats are made up anyways. So I just want us to reflect on this. As you look at just this little simple statement, life with Jesus is to abide, not strive. I ask you, what is the nature of a life that is abiding and not striving? The question's not going to be up there, but what is the nature of a life that might actually be abiding in Jesus versus a life that's striving in your own will, in your own mind? Might be relationally, might be emotionally, might be spiritually. Just want to talk the best you can with that. There's no right answers here. There's definitely wrong ones. But just have fun for just a couple minutes, and then we're going to turn into something else and maybe a little bit of a practice. So really quickly, what's the nature amongst yourselves, 2 or 3 other people around you? What's the nature of a life that is abiding versus a life that is striving? Go ahead. Maybe about 1 more minute. Start winding down whoever's on the thought. All right, as we wind down conversation, the last word being shared, I would just be curious if a few brave people, you don't have to say it out loud in length, but maybe in just 2, 3, no more than 5 words, what came up? It could be 1-word answers, 5-word answers,
It's not going to be 5.
12.
I was just reading it, and it just says that, like, if we want to abide in Christ, that we keep His commandments. And then in verse 12, he says that we love one another in His greatest commandment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it feels more relational to be with Christ by loving each other instead of, like, trying to force myself into this, holy relationship.
That's good. You can come finish my sermon. That would be great. Alana, thank you. It's good. It's good. It's relational. There's actually ways of relating to others that lives this out of remaining and abiding in Jesus. What else?
Mine was kind of simple.
Okay.
It's abiding is just doing God's will.
Mm-hmm.
And striving is you're turning in the wrong direction, and then you realize it and you strive to go back.
Yeah, it's good. So striving is the way in which we could actually take things in our own hands and could even move outside of the will or the ways that God has. Yeah, it's good. Maybe one more? And then I'll tee it up. Yeah, Holly. Mm-hmm. There you go. Yeah, it's good. Can we actually be before we do? Because again, there's nowhere in the scriptures that anyone says not do anything. Actually, one of the things that we can live out our faith the most is to work hard, to not be lazy, to not just take and consume from others, but to participate, to give, to work hard for. But can we be something different before we do that thing? So did anybody get to, like, what do people experience when we might be abiding versus striving? Did anybody get to that? The impact it has and it works out towards other people? Good. That would be, yes, Daniel.
We're talking about parenting. Like our kids don't need us to do all the things that parents do. They want us to be a parent, present. That's not.
That's good. Presence. So with kids, we're not going to be perfect parents, but can we be present? And that piece right there, that idea of presence, might be one of the greatest ways in which we can actually communicate love to other people. Can we remain present when things are hard? Can we remain present when we don't agree? And this is where, I'll nerd out for a second, Jesus might be the most differentiated person we've ever experienced, where he can be with people who are so different against him, hate him, all these different things, and he can still remain present. He can still remain grace-filled. And he can still hold to his convictions and not compromise. He can still stay connected with others, even when the most natural thing to do is just to cut off. One of the greatest ways we can communicate that we've been present to by Jesus is that we can be present to others. I can remember that one of the images I oftentimes get when thinking about that, playing soccer growing up as a goalkeeper, my dad would always stand on the half in which I was playing, so you switch sides at halftime, and I could always remember my dad would walk to the other side of the field to stand on the half that I was playing in. And it was just this image of just, my parents never got everything right. I'm going to get everything right. It's going to work out great for my kids. But he was present. Is it not the people who you're around that they don't need to say anything and you can just experience love? Are those not the people that you want to be around the most? They could say 100 different things and it doesn't matter because it's their presence. Can we be people who are open to the presence that God has extended to us? So Alana, to your point, it continues. John 15, 12 to 14. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Love each other as I have loved you. Jesus saying this, love each other as I have loved you. Meaning, you don't have to strive to love other people. You do not have to strive to endure or tolerate other people. You do not have to strive. What you do, what I do, what you and I do is we receive the love that Jesus has extended first and foremost. Because outside of that, we can do nothing. Without the love that has gripped our hearts, that has gripped our minds, that has changed the way from the inside out, which when we talk about the gospel, for those that might be outside of church or discovering Jesus or new to it, this idea of gospel is good news in its simplest form. If someone is proclaiming something of the gospel that is not good news to somebody, I would question, is it the gospel? Jesus has extended his hand while you and I were far off, motivated by his love, motivated by God's love. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one friend. Haven't we talked about that one in church a lot? Man, I would just lay down my life for my friend. This is the greatest way. Like, we think that, man, the best way to communicate love to someone else is if you die for them. Anybody? Like you just feel that when you hear this verse? But watch what Jesus does here. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. You are my friends. Meaning, Jesus isn't asking you and I to jump in front of a car for somebody. He's saying that I have come to you and I have sacrificed my love so that you and I can be friends, so that you and I can remain in each other. You and I can be present to each other. And the command becomes to enter into the receiving of his love so that that love can be extended to other people. When I'm feeling judgmental, can I remain in Jesus so that I can be less judgmental towards other people? When I'm feeling anxious, can I turn to abide in Jesus so that I can show up non-anxious in and with other people? When I'm feeling resentful, can I turn to Jesus to remind me that I have been forgiven so that I can forgive other people? When I'm feeling bound to the things that I own and my possessions and my money, can I turn to Jesus to remember that everything I have has been given to me by him so that I can open my hands and things can move through me rather than just to me? You see how it starts to impact the world when we can remain, when we can abide, when we can turn to God and offer ourselves. A practice in my life that has helped with this tremendously is reading a different psalm each morning. The Psalms are the book of prayers found in the Old Testament, and they are filled with many confusing things, but what they're mostly filled with is the depth of people's experiences in life, how things are the absolute worst in all categories, and yet at the same time can turn towards the hope that God has for us. And we can sit in that tension. And so I start every day with a psalm. And it helps me communicate the pain and the hardship and the challenge and all the things that are going in my life that I don't feel like I can actually muster the energy for, that I feel hurt by, that I feel bitter by, that I feel cheated by, whatever it is. And I can offer that to God and yet at the same time say, God, it is in your everlasting hope that I can find my life. It is you that is going to carry all things through. And I can enter into the day with a hope even in the midst of all the things that are hard. What this starts to look like also is as we start to learn our personalities, Enneagram, Working Genius, Myers-Briggs, your spouse just telling you who you are, whatever it is. It's so that I can become aware of my natural ways of being so that I can become greater when I offer that to God. We use Working Genius here as a staff, and we work through certain leadership stuff that way. And my ways of operating through that lens is I have discernment and galvanizing, meaning with little information, I love to make decisions, and most of the time they're pretty decent. And then I want to figure out who's in the room. How can we actually see the gifting in other people, and people can grow into their passions and their giftings and to move forward in our lens through a kingdom purpose. Now, quickly, when something comes up, I can just go to discernment and galvanizing instantly. Is that the worst thing? No, God has wired us. He's created us. We have experiences that have shaped and are formed us. But is this a chance to remain in God to say, God, what I want to do is I want to start solving this. I want to start discerning. I want to make a decision. I want to start figuring out the people. Or is it an opportunity to say, God, I have this gifting, but can I remain in you first? Because it feels oftentimes like I start doing that and then I start to feel like I'm striving. I'm starting to make something happen. I start to only see it through my narrow lens. But if I can stop, so everything that you and I have, these are the opportunities for us to pause. So do you do this? Do you pause when things get hard? Do you pause before decisions? Do you pause when even life is going well? To abide, to turn back to the love that has been extended to you so that we can love others. Very quickly, one more thing. I'm actually going to invite Nathan and the worship team forward, and we're going to go into worship here in a second. This might be demonstrated most clearly through two people that Jesus invited into his group of 12 early on. this ragtag, uneducated group of men who could not do it very well, it seems. And two people we could use here are Matthew and Simon. Out of 12, these are the two. Matthew was a chief tax collector. Simon was a revolutionary. Matthew, as a tax collector, opposed Simon as a tax protester, and vice versa. Matthew collected money for the Romans. Simon rebelled against the Romans. Matthew was wealthy. Simon was a commoner. Matthew lived to overcharge people like Simon, and Simon lived to kill people like Matthew. You think your Thanksgiving dinner table with family is awkward and hard? These people spent years together, having meals together, praying together, trying to figure out this way of Jesus together. Like, could you imagine, like, I don't know, right now you could throw like Trump and Clinton in a room together and they're like having a meal. We can just keep getting more extreme with this. And Jesus is saying, like, hey, why don't you guys come together? We're going to do this thing that changes the world together. And I need you two that absolutely hate and despise each other and are not going to be able to be in a room together. Unless you abide in me. Unless you open yourself up to receive the love that I have for you. Unless you receive that love and let it pass through to other people. To be present to them. To sit with, to extend a hand with, to be gracious towards, be kind towards, to be merciful. Robert Mulholland is a spiritual author, and he says there are two ways of being in the world. In the world for God, or in God for the world. So simple yet so profound. Where's our starting point? Am I just Ryan, a guy who's married and has a couple kids and gives his best shot at this pastoring thing, lives in Fresno? Is that my starting point? Is my starting point who I am at work? Is my starting point my family? What's my starting point? Is my starting point that I have been created and pursued by the creator of the universe to be invited to dwell with him, to be invited into a friendship with him? And if I can't get to that place, will I ever be able to, one, experience it myself, and two, extend the love that God has for all people? So as the team starts to strum, I just want us to pause, maybe close our eyes for a second, just for 1 minute. Maybe take a deep breath or two. And without much instruction, I just want you to abide. Pause. And then I'll have a couple of prompts for us in a second. And now in grace, I want you to allow your past week just to come to you. Almost imagine the movie being played back. And in grace, I want you to recognize any of the moments where you strived. And now in grace, I want want you to look ahead into this week and imagine, how might you be invited to abide this week? Why don't we stand together?